call the meeting to order. It's a pleasure to have everybody here tonight. Good to see everybody. And if we can, we'll go ahead. First item is a discussion of a noise ordinance as it relates to business on Main Street, the Big Apple, Leo, Showtime.
Doesn't look like he's here.
He's not present, Mayor.
Okay.
And he made the request, so.
Okay. We're moving on to the next item 2. Presentation of award received by the Water Department. Scott Murphy.
Mayor and Council, I appreciate you having us here tonight. Let me get Mr. Thomas Coker up here and Janelle Buell. Thomas is the superintendent over the water and wastewater treatment systems, and Chanel is the lab manager, and they're the ones that earned this award for us, and I feel it's appropriate that they be here. In the state of Georgia, we have about 2,600 community water systems, and of the 2,600, 200, less than 200 this year, were eligible for this award. This is an award given by the Georgia Association of Water Professionals, of which we're all members, that means that the city and the county water system passed all of their tests for the entire year. I mean, they're in compliance with every single test that was performed. That seems pretty straightforward. You kind of expect that from your water system. But keep in mind, these gentlemen will do approximately 15,000 tests per year. Some of them will require retesting. It requires a lot of work out in the field. We're very proud of them tonight and wanted to have them up here to present this award to you guys for your water and for your water system.
Is this the first time that the city of Tifton won this?
It is.
First time.
Excellent. Excellent.
Congratulations.
All right, we're going to move on to item 3, and that's consider the request to allow sale of craft beer growlers. And that would be Troy Apadasa.
Yes, sir. I'm not sure if he's here. I don't think we actually required him to be, but he is requesting the ability to sell growlers. It's basically a container for craft beer, but it would be packaged retail, where someone would go into his store, buy a growler, and then could take that growler back and have it refilled. But it has to be sealed to state standards for him to take it out of the store. So basically, it's just another way to buy a craft packaged retail beer.
How do you feel about that?
I don't have a problem with it as long as they're complying with it. A store that actually sells on-site consumption could not sell beer of this type. So it's not a place that they would go and stand and drink beer in a store. They would have to remove it. It would have to meet state standards to do that.
And you're okay with that, Mr. Troy?
Yeah, they're pretty popular these days. You can go to some of these mini breweries and they'll sell these bottled growlers. I noticed when I was in Columbus not long ago, they have little growlers next to the Cannon restaurant. So it's fairly popular, and I said they're sealed. So when you buy it, it's kind of like our Merlot to go type of ordinance. So
I did include a copy of what the state law basically says is it's up to a city to allow it. So I Googled a couple of cities and I put a sample of what Peachtree City is doing to change their ordinance to allow it. It's pretty straightforward in there. So it defines what a growler is and what a growler retailer is. So
Okay.
I don't think it would take a whole lot for us to amend our ordinance to.
Not less than 12 ounces or more than 64 ounces.
Is it extra permit required for this, or?
Well, that's
would
up
it be
to
under
us.
their own?
That would be up to us. And I'll do a little bit more research to see what other cities are doing
Okay.
before we bring it back to you.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, we're going to move on to item number 4. That is the discussion of City of Tifton utility bills. Ms. Sheila?
Mayor, if I may, before we get into that, tag on Ron and Sheila and the entire customer service department, building department, finance department. They worked on this thing for, what, 2 weeks straight, trying to get through this conversion. And as you know, when you're dealing with any kind of software and doing conversions, you're going to have a couple of
Hiccups.
little bit hiccups, thank you.
Burps. Not hiccup,
I've
burp.
been a bomb, I'm not sure. They
Yeah.
they did an outstanding job. We still have a few issues that we're dealing with, but for the most part, we are on the new billing system now. So that should make it.
If I remember correctly, it's been 6 years since we tried to get this new billing system. As Larry alluded to, about 3 weeks ago, we went live with our new billing system. And with that, some changes occurred with the bills. Unfortunately, we weren't made aware of the changes until the bills actually went out to our customers. Therefore, we weren't able to let our customers know as well as you know what the changes were. In your packet there, you will see we gave you 2 different examples of the bill. You know, the first example there is an example of an old bill. The second example. The new bill, some of the changes that occurred was, if you look at the top part, below where the account number is, you see a ID number. Okay, that has changed now. When a customer actually calls in via the IVR system or they make a payment on the web, instead of asking for the old City of Tifton account number, it's going to ask for a payment ID.
Still saying the account number.
In the bottom here, which is payment ID.
Okay.
Those 2 numbers are still tied together. However, they will use the payment ID when they call in or either go on the web to make a payment. In the center there, where the detailed summary of the charges is, in the past, the base fees and your usage were all together. Now with the new billing system, they're all separated, which is good. Now a person is able to see what the actual usage is on their bills versus your base fees. So that's one of the main changes that has occurred. We've had a lot of calls about it recently, of course, because we weren't able to let our customers know that the changes were taking place. So they have been real, acceptable to the fact that the bill has changed. And what we're going to do now is, when we went live with our new billing system, we went live with our new type of bills about 2 years ago, our billing company actually printed us a new bill change form. Okay, so this should be able to go out in the bill next week. I'm in the process now working on it so that they will let them know the different changes that occur in the bill.
And most of the calls that we've received, they haven't really been fussing about it. They haven't understood.
Okay.
So when we've explained it, they can a lot of them appreciate the fact that they can now see how much they're actually using from one month to the
Yeah,
next.
this looks good to me.
So, but we're going to get them educated as quickly as we can.
Okay.
Okay?
Sheila, I appreciate that. Larry, I actually had called Larry because I got several calls of people concerned about it because they got it and thought they were getting extra charges in the bill. In fact, one older gentleman said, am I getting double charged here? I said, well, no. So I had to call Sheila so she could explain the new bill to me. And as I told Larry, this is a service that we pay for. We're these people's customers. So when they make changes, they need to notify us before they just arbitrarily make that change because we're paying for this service. So I made sure Larry communicated that to them, and I hope he did. That going forward, we don't need burps, as Ron put it, like this because we're their customer. And we have customers of our own. So, anyway, thank y'all for coming and explaining that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sheila, we appreciate that. Our next item of business is number 5, the ordinance amending chapter 4 of the Code of Ordinances to add a table for standards for minimum gross floor area to provide for minimum gross floor areas for dwelling units, to establish requirements for underpinning of pre-owned manufacturing homes. Bert Rush.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to do these separately, although they're on the same ordinance because they are 2 different items. The first one of Chapter 4, as you mentioned, is to set a standard for minimum gross floor foot area for a dwelling unit on any specific zoning area. And what it was is we used to have one, and there wasn't one put into the LDC, and this is to put that back in. So we do have a minimum square footage, so that you can look in your material that's been given to you, sent to you, that's actually on the ordinance. And it just basically it's just an easy to read chart where people can go into Chapter 4 where most of the charts are at and talk about zoning, and say, okay, if I'm in an R20, it's a certain size, it has to be a minimum of a certain size. And it just establishes those areas, protects the communities, that's what it's about. But any questions about that one? The next one is chapter 4, section 4.03.07D. We have in the land development code, which probably should be sufficient, but there was some questions came up from a legal standpoint. It is required that anybody that installs a mobile home in the city of Tifton must underpin it within so many days according to state law. However, there's not anything, as strange as this sounded to me, I was convinced by staff that this could become a problem. The reason that someone could tear that out after that was put up, and then technically we couldn't say you've got to keep it up. This way, not only do you have to have it underpinned within a certain amount of days, I think it's 60 days, maybe 45, I think it's 60. Anyway, but you must keep it up. So if somebody's, has the dog tears it out or something like that, we can go and say, look, you've got to underpin your trailer. Give them so many days to do it, and make sure that they stay underpinned. So it's kind of a legal thing to give us precedence to be able to make sure they stay underpinned. Okay? Any questions?
Would there be a grandfather situation in there if people are already there? Is that, doesn't matter the age?
They're
it's
supposed
got
to be underpinned now,
Okay.
already.
Okay.
And if they're not, then we either are on or are working on getting on all of those before
Okay.
we're through.
Okay.
We're in that process now.
Bert, why does this not have to go through P&Z?
It already has.
So it's already gone to P&Z?
Yes, and it was approved. Both of those points were approved unanimously.
All right, Bert, if you'll move on to number 6, that's the ordinance amending chapter 7 of the Code of Ordinances related to signing.
Okay, and I'll take this one step at a time also, if that's okay with everybody. Excuse me. Let me make sure I get it right. Okay, the first one is to section 7.02.00, and that is the definitions portion of chapter 7. We wanted to add, amend the restrictions, the signage types relative to the zoning districts, providing for regulation for electric display signs. And we've talked about that on multiple occasions about the electronic graphic display signs. We did not have a definition for electronic display signage. This change would allow for that definition to be placed into chapter 7, along with a couple of other definitions of types of signage that have come up through time, to make sure that they are in the definition section. That's all that is to add some definitions. That was approved by planning and zoning. The next one is chapter 7, section 7.12.00G, to add regulations for A-frame signage. I don't know if y'all remember, but when we talked with Ms. Burns, she talked about that A-frame signage was a very usable type of signage. We've never had any regulations on A-frames, with the exception of the commercial downtown district. After reviewing it, we as staff wanted to include A-frame signs citywide as a type of signage, okay? I mean, because we want to keep everything as equal as possible and give people an opportunity to use that type of signage. It's a very portable type of signage. It's a very changeable type of signage. It just seemed to fit our city quite well. That was what that was. Any questions about the A-frame signage into the land development code? The next one is chapter 7, signage, section 717.00B, at a section related to the regulations of illuminated signs in historic districts in accordance with the city historic manual. What that basically did is said that any lighted signage in the historic district would be regulated by the requirement of having a COA, which was really already impressed in several different places, but is now in the LDC under signage specifically. Okay? Any questions? All right. 717.01 added regulations for electric display signage. We had talked about that. In fact, if y'all remember in our planning sessions and workshops in the past, we actually set a standard and actually sent it back to y'all when y'all reviewed it individually. It related to how we were going to regulate electronic graphic signage. If you want me to go over that again, I will, but we've gone over it several times already. And that was also approved. That pretty well covers the improvements for chapter 7, but with that being said, I also want to add that with the meeting that we had with the Planning and Zoning Commission, they had 2 requests to come to council that related, one related to signage, the other one related to general. And I want to throw this in at this time before we go to the HPC part, and I just want to read them off the minutes in case that you may have missed that. It says, there was some discussion about the commission related to desire to meet with council. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission, in order to get a better understanding of the desires of council for the city as a whole. A request was made in the form of a motion in second S, asking council to set up a meeting with Planning and Zoning Commission for a discussion in related matters. The request also requested this be done on a periodic basis in order to set up a dialogue between council and Planning and Zoning. It was a unanimous vote for that request. And where that came from is that when we require our commissioners to go off the training, and when they go off the training and other cities are meeting periodically with their council and their planning and zoning, it's a very common practice. They would like to do that in order to get more of a dialogue going and be able to get more of how your separate districts may be feeling about particular things, and at the same time hear how they, from a public standpoint, are to set up that dialogue, that sharing of information. So that
Well, let me bring in the attorney on that. I know we've always been cautioned to be careful, about even going to the P&Z meeting, because we're the last recourse for the citizen that goes to the P&Z. So we've been told to kind of be careful, don't say anything up front or anything like that. Now, is this going to be okay to do a meeting of this sort? Does that violate what kind of we've been told in the past?
It could be probably, that could be an issue.
We certainly want to meet with them.
Sure.
But we don't want to do anything that's going to be misconstrued.
But generally, if there's more than, 3 of the council members, that would be a quorum. And if business is discussed, then that would be a meeting within the,
Yeah.
Georgia Open Meetings laws.
Could I put that in committee with just 2 people?
There,
You think that would suffice for P&Z?
Well,
Get
what
past the
they-
legal standpoint?
I think that probably the best way to handle it would probably just have 2 council members, maybe rotate, something like that.
Okay.
But I do know that it would not be a problem if you went to planning and zoning to that meeting and sat and did not participate. That would be okay. But as soon as the council members start participating, then you're having a meeting, and that can't be an issue. So I would suggest if there was one set up a meeting with planning and zoning to discuss various issues, then maybe it could be done,
2-2-1.
2-2-1s or on a rotating basis. That would be the safest option.
That's great, and that needs to be done. We need to be in touch with our people. They do a fantastic job.
What do these other communities do it? What other community, do you know how?
Thomasville, I think, was one of the communities that had it, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure that was the one. And what they do is they have a workshop. Basically, they have a official workshop that they call specifically for that purpose, that's the way they handle it.
Where there's not necessarily applications being
There is
discussed,
nothing
it's
to
just a
do
sharing
with
of
applications.
information.
It's a sharing of general information as far as direction, development, what they make. This is all generalizations for guidance. It's no different than that. It's
I think
nothing to
that
do
could be-
with, no
that's the
specific
difference.
cases are discussed at these meetings. It's direction. How someone in your zone may be feeling about a specific topic versus somebody in another district. And that's what
That would be true
It's not just a workshop
Yeah.
meeting on it.
That's right. If you just comply with the Open Meetings Law where you're advertising it, then certainly you can make something like that happen.
But you don't discuss any zoning cases.
No,
Very
no,
specific.
that's not what it's
Okay, so
for.
that's a safety.
That's not what it's for.
Discuss any zoning cases.
I think that would be beneficial, if not just that board, but some of our other boards as well. Just maybe an annual, just to get together and, we used to do the board recognition events and something like that, but anyway, I think that's a good idea.
The other thing that they had, just to throw this out too, is it's also brought forth as a motion and a second request for council to include all signage facing outward to the public, whether inside a building or outside a building, be considered signage, and therefore regulated by the LDC chapter, the LDC signage chapter, which is chapter 7. So it was unanimous to bring that to the attention of the council. So basically what they're asking is that they would like to see some request or some so it would be an ordinance, whatever it would be, brought forth for a discussion, or at least an opportunity to look at, the possibility of looking at, all signage that faces outward to the street, whether it's inside or outside of the building, if it faces outward, be considered under the regulations of LDC.
If it's not, if I'm not mistaken here, I think we had a discussion about the inside stuff. And if I remember, there was consistent, you had the feeling from 4 people, we want to mess with stuff on the inside.
I believe that there was a consensus that we would not attempt to regulate signs on the inside of the building.
Right. And are they asking us to regulate signs on the inside?
They are asking to take another look at that, for council to take a look at that again.
Can they present us with any evidence or something that we can, that would be of issue?
Their issue is with interior signage that faces out toward the street.
Like the brightness of it, or?
The blinking, flashing, strobing, keep going, but that's the basis of it, that's the true basis of it, because I have no, way to do anything about that. So, I'm just presenting it to y'all as it was presented to me, but that was the major concern. A lot to do too with a lot of the new modern, we call them electronic neons and such as that, you see a lot of borders around the inside of windows, you see a lot of flashing lights on the inside of windows, such as that.
Well, we discussed already having the dimensions that you could do on the inside. We discussed all of that. And I don't speak for anybody else. I know I didn't have any appetite to go inside somebody's building and regulate anything. And I ain't changed. So that's just from me. Right. I mean, I'm not going inside somebody's business. This is America.
It's my business. Come in there if you want.
Boy, y'all can vote for it if I show one.
For y'all.
I appreciate the P and
I'm
Z
just
offering that
with
to
it. They're
us.
just-
I'm just telling you how I feel.
Okay.
I will not change on that issue.
All right. The next thing that comes up would be your third item that I had, would be modifications to text amendment to change some of the historic preservation.
Bert, can I stop right there? Because
Yes, sir.
either I know I'm hard of hearing. I don't remember you talking about item 5 here, the amend chapter 7, section 7.19.00I to reduce the reclamation fee to recover in county.
I did not. Thank you, Mayor, for bringing that to my
Okay.
attention. I got sidetracked on
No-
the
no
other
problem.
points. That is the last one on that. We had formed, or you had, Mayor, had formed a committee made up of Councilman Parrott and Councilman Terrell to look into the reclamation fees, which
Yes.
were at that time set at $30 according to the Land Development Code. We had a meeting back October, November. And the decision that was made, that was presented to me, was to change it from $30 to $5, from 30 to 5 for a sign reclamation. Now keep in mind, any sign that we have located on the right of way, we have to pull it. It is a violation and we cannot leave it there because of safety conditions, safety reasons.
Yeah.
So the reclamation fee is for the fee for, it has nothing to do with the violation itself, except for them to come and pick their sign back up. And I know a lot of the different businesses that we had, specifically in this case with some real estate brokers and such, wanted to be able to bring their signs back, buyers that get their signs back, pay a fee to get them back, $30 if that was too high. The recommendation was to adjust that to $5. That was the recommendation of planning and zoning and from the department, from my department also. And that's what that one is about. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, no
I just
problem.
went right by.
That's a lot of stuff to cover.
Lastly, certainly not leastly, would be the changes to the to the HPC guidelines. Let me find that, please. I got the contract here. Okay, the amendment to the Tifton Historical District Manual, Chapter 2, Section 4, signage, to provide for definitions. That was first. The use of banners, stick signs, and A-frames, and provide for other illumination. Provide for regulation of electronic display signs for other purposes and for other purposes. And I would like to take these one at a time. Basically, what it came down to, and we had talked about most of this, there were 2 requests for changes that came from both the HPC and from P&Z commissions, from what was presented in the original documentation that was sent out. If you don't mind holding that up for me, Rob, so they'll see what I'm talking about. It was sent out with this. The first change that came about was a question that came about actually as a request for us to look at it from council, was dealing with the use of and where the signs would be used, speaking of banners, stick signs, and A-frame signs. It was the determination of staff and also the determination of both of those boards to allow banners, and remember it was just one banner, that's what the thing said, within the historic district, and that's what we're talking about. The banners to be limited to only commercial properties according to our zoning characteristics. All those stick signs and A-frame signs would be allowed in any district as long as they follow the guidelines of the LDC and as long as they follow the guidelines within the Historic Preservation Commission. That is in a sense of approval and such as that. That was the first thing. Any questions on that particular portion? I'm taking it a portion at a time because it's a pretty big elephant. I don't want to bite off more than I can. Are there any questions relating to those 3 types of items from that standpoint as to where they would be regulated? Okay, that portion also allows them in the historic district as types of sign throughout the district. Of course, you remember that we've opened up A-frame signs to all the city. So it kind of, that's the type of sign we want to promote, actually as a sign used over some of the other types of signage that we've had. Okay. The next portion related to allowing illumination. If you'll look in your the part that was sent, the actual this portion here. I'm sorry. It allowed for certain definitions to be added to the definition portion, and those definitions related to, mainly we added the definition for electronic graphic display signs in the definition portion of the Historic Preservation Manual. We also added for stick signs, and we also added for the A-frame signs. Both commissions agreed that we probably needed to define, probably they would like to see some other types of lit signs defined, i.e. channel lighting. That word was mentioned a lot in our committee meetings, where you've got a type of sign that's just lit from the inside. A lot of restaurants use it and such. Neon needed to be defined clearer in the definitions, and they also wanted to see something for what we consider to call a lit box type sign, which is your standard light from the inside out. Needs to be defined, because those are types of illuminated signs. There's many others, but those are ones that we specifically get a lot of requests or questions about. They also requested that Section 9 in that guideline, which actually defines how it's basically a statement that came from the Land Development Code about electronic graphic display, because the electronic graphic display is a lit type of sign and would be allowed on a case-by-case basis as defined by Section 10 illumination, with the guidelines for looking at it no different than any other lit sign. Their request from both commissions was to remove Section 9, not that it eliminates the signs because it is a lit type sign, but that it may in some way impose that that is a approved type of signage. That was their request. Okay.
Run that by one more time, just a little slower.
Okay.
What is, from what you know that we wanted and what you know they wanted, tell me what the difference is.
3 basic things. You want them all or just this last one? You want everything?
Mainly the last
The
one.
last one. Electronic graphic display sign is a type of a lit sign. It's a illuminated sign. It's defined as an illuminated sign by everything we've got, a definition, by everything. So it is regulated by number 10 in the guideline, which is basically says, you know, it's, can I see it, please? It basically says an illumination that, you know, only indirect signs are appropriate for illuminated backlit. It says, although indirect signs are preferred methods of illumination in the district, other means of illumination may be considered on a case-by-case basis. And, you know, we talked about this and the thing. And then it lists a list of approximation to other signs, approximation to residential, nature and character of the neighborhood, resident or community, hours of illumination. There's a whole list of things that they use as a criteria to consider if they would allow a illuminated sign in the historic district or not.
Isn't that basically what we talked about?
It's exactly what we talked about.
Yeah.
That's exactly verbatim what we talked about, okay? But what we also did is that in the original plan, there had been a number 9, which is basically a definition of electronic graphic display signs put into the historic manual.
Yeah.
Not a definition, but just a column number 9 in signage, okay?
Basically, Mayor, by including EGD signs in the definitions and cover it in chapter 10,
Yes.
or section 10, it eliminated the need for that number 9. So
Okay.
we just don't need it anymore because it's covered elsewhere in the guidelines.
It's defined already, and then how they look at them is defined very distinctly by y'all's decision-making process there.
Okay.
And so it's kind of duplicate, it's kind of repetitive, and they basically recommended it came out. Not because they're not going to do them, but because they're doing them as the illumination guideline says they're going to do. Okay? That was the only other change, and I believe that was all of the changes within the whole section from the Historic Preservation Commission guidelines. Any questions?
What's the trend on projection type signs?
You talking about like the
Like
liquid
the
displays?
heavy-duty construction signs that come out of buildings?
Sure.
I know our ordinance provides for that. Y'all get any more of those?
I'm not sure if I understand what you're talking about.
Signs and things
Oh, you're
like
talking about like a project, you mean like a person?
Stands out.
We do from time to time. Usually they're not lit, but I mean, it could be technically if it, you know, if it came up. We do from time to time get what we call a, you know, projection sign. We get a request for one every once in a while. Usually it's where somebody has a business, and believe it or not, the commercial downtown,
Right.
and there's just not enough room to put a sign up, so legally they can, and that is a type of signage
A lot of
under the
downtowns
store.
use that type of sign,
They
that's what I was
do,
asking.
and they are allowed. They are allowed by the HPC guidelines. Like I said, they have to go through the review process and the COA process like everybody else. But we do see some. I think I've had 2 since I've been here, actually. And they were usually smaller for the little small storefront stores that were opening. And they just felt like if they stuck it out, and you know, it's regulated how high it has to be. It can't be over a certain height, it can't be over a certain size. Must be attached properly and all that. But at the same time, it gives them visual benefits coming up and down the street. And a lot of them want to use that, and it's a viable type of sign.
Walkers and stuff will see those kind of signs.
That's right.
So we're hiding EGD signs and illuminated signs.
I'm sorry?
We're hiding EGD signs in the illuminated guidelines, is that right?
Well, we're not necessarily hiding them there, that's where they fall, that's what they are. I mean, they're lit signs, and they're defined in the definition portion as a type of lit sign. That includes whether it be LED or, you know, liquid crystal display, whatever it may be. They are there, and they are to be considered on a case-by-case basis, just like any other lit sign.
I noticed on there under the pros and cons, there were no cons to this. The DNR reviewed our recommendations. They actually suggested against EGD signs. I think we would need to make that as a con, because there are consequences that go along with it. So,
Would you like me to change that for you?
yes, ma'am.
I would be glad to.
What are you changing that to?
He said that on the council agenda item, which you really have gotten before you, it looks like this, on the bottom where it says pros and cons.
He just wants that added.
He wants that con added as a con.
Sure.
I mean, I can do that without any problem.
Just want to make everybody aware that that's, not everything is pro in this ordinance.
I don't know if we need to discuss, you know, our conversation with Ms. Burns and if that has any impact.
So,
No, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Probably not.
I would make that. Anything else? Any other questions?
No,
Thank y'all very much.
I'm good.
Is
Thank
it
you,
permitted
Bert.
to ask a question by a member?
Okay, let me.
I don't know what the rules are.
hold on, Buck, let me ask the council, will we accept any comments tonight? We aren't voting or anything, but can we allow somebody to make a comment?
Well, I'll be glad to ask Mr. Crowe at another time if it's not within y'all's rules to allow a question. I just don't know.
I'm okay with that.
I'm fine with it, I'm just asking you at this
I
time.
think that we have allowed public input at workshops within your discretion. So if you'd like to hear from Mr. Reagan.
A few people would, believe me, so this would be an exception if anybody would hear from me. May I?
Sure.
I just don't know that I understand, Mr. Crowe. Is it okay?
Pardon me?
Is it okay for me to go ahead and ask this question? Sure. Am I understanding that in residential-only sections of the historic district that stick signs and A-frame signs are allowed if this goes through as recommended?
That is correct.
Is this allowed in other residential sections of the city?
Stick signs already are.
What about A-frame signs?
A-frames will be if the Land Development Code Chapter 7 changes that are here. We've
So
never
all,
had a
so
rule.
this will be available for all residential sections of within the city limits of Tifton if this passes, not just,
Yes, the numbers would be different, the allowances would be different, but yes, it would be.
and what is an A-frame? I'm not really sure.
Sandwich board type sign, if you like, can I hand you that and show them what? It's right here, I'm not sure.
And the sandwich board type A-frame sign now would be appropriate for all residential areas within the city of Tifton if this passes.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Buck.
If I ask something else along that same line, this is kind of as a clarification, does this mean that if I have a business and I live in the residential area, I can put an A-frame sign in my front yard that advertises my business?
Yes.
That means that my next door neighbor can do it. I could ride down a residential area anywhere in this community and see it littered with advertising for any business or anything that anybody feels like they need to put in their front yard.
I'm not sure if I understand the word litter, but they
Well,
could be there, yes.
And so we could have, you could ride down any residential street in this community and you could see literally advertising signs in every yard.
Yes.
Is this what our community wants?
You have to ask your community.
Well, I've asked my community, I can go up and down the street and know this is not what they want. You may have 1 out of 100 that wants it. This is not what, I don't dare speak for anybody, but I would guarantee you this is not what the overwhelming majority of people in this community want. It'll be confusing. It destroys the sense of your repose and your going back to we go to our homes for our quiet. This is not a commercial area. To me, it just throws zoning almost out the roof. I don't understand this at all. And I can guarantee every person on this city commission that 90% of people living in a residential area, if they're seeing that kind of stuff, they're opposed to it in a huge way. And that part is a huge mistake. So I don't know where this came from.
Yeah, I'm a little confused myself. In a residential area, I thought all this was dealt with in the historic RP and the commercial. I thought we made that clear right up front. You mean to tell me in a residential area, where Steve lives, that his next door neighbor can put up a business sign?
Well, they already can there if it meets the criteria for.
They already can, even before all this?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So this was already in place before all this?
They're not the A-frame type, but they can put up signage of certain types.
Are you talking about like a political sign? Is that what you're talking
That
about?
would be a stick type sign.
Now
yes,
that
sir.
I understand, but could I put a sign in my front yard that's an advertising sign for business and leave it up there permanently?
I think it has to be.
No, I don't think you can.
And I'm asking the question, I don't know.
I think to clarify it completely, okay, say myself, I own the Fun Channel. In my front yard, if I want to put a A-frame sign up that says, watch the Fun Channel, even though the Fun Channel is not at my home, could I sell that spot to somebody and say, eat Joe's Donuts? And how many signs could I put in my yard? And how big could the sign be? And I think that's a real question that we
I
haven't
didn't
covered.
think that was what we were doing.
I think what we ought to do is, we're going to take this public input, let's get everybody talking one at a time.
I'm sorry, I
That's okay.
apologize to the
So
council.
we can appropriately address it.
I apologize to the council for the outburst.
No, there's no outburst. You're fine. We're trying to figure this thing out because this is new.
The question that was presented to me from the staff standpoint is that within our residential zones, we do have businesses. We have businesses that are cottage businesses. We have businesses that are owner-occupied businesses such
Oh,
as that.
Home occupation.
Home occupations,
you're talking about-
such as that, and so the reason
Well, I thought
was
home
to allow
occupation,
them with a,
that you
and
weren't allowed
I
to put
do
signs.
hate to, well, I mean, it wasn't, it doesn't regulate from what it does. I mean, I'm not arguing with what either one of the gentlemen are saying, I'm not. I am saying, however, the purpose of the initial plan to use A-frames was to allow them to have a type of sign that they could change with very low cost, move in and out if they wanted to.
This is in residential
It's only
areas?
if you have a business. in
Right.
it.
That's
Only if
supposed
you
to
have a
be- it's supposed to be
business
the
in a
first.
Oh,
residential
okay,
area.
business, in other words, people
It's
who
on
live beside
residential.
Steve
The
or
thing that
residential,
most
just
people may
like
not
this.
understand, and I
We're
would
not
like-
talking about them being able to put one up next to Steve.
No, sir, not like, well, I mean, again, if there was a business next to Steve, I can't say that there couldn't be a business next to Steve.
But there isn't, his is R20.
Well, I don't know what's next to Steve.
Yeah.
There
or I
could be a
don't know.
home occupation.
There could be a home
next.
occupation
I thought,
there.
I didn't know home occupations allowed any kind of sign.
They can
Yes,
have a
sir.
small
They can
sign.
have a small sign.
For example, on my street, I am in strictly residential, it's not
Correct.
RP or anything,
That's
but my
right.
next door neighbor teaches piano,
And she
which
has a
she's
small
perfectly
sign.
entitled to do, and she has a sign in her
Right.
front yard, which
That's
she's
correct.
perfectly entitled to
That's
do.
right.
So she could absolutely add an A-frame that says free piano lessons.
But it's always been this way, Bert.
They were
Prior to what
allowed
we've
for a
done,
hanging
this has
to
always been this way.
a type of signage, not a frame.
We're just
Never
saying we can
said
do an
that.
A-frame, which looks better than just a sign
That's,
sometimes.
that's the
Quite
idea,
frankly.
that's the principle.
But you're not talking about being able to put one next door to.
No,
a
sir,
But that
but
means
Nancy
you
has a
don't-
business there.
Okay.
But what's the definition of business? They're like many people have rental property. I mean, I own rental property. Can my front yard, can I list these places available for rent?
You already can do that, according to the ordinance, you can put up a sign saying for rent, address and amount. at any
Yeah,
given
but
time,
it's
any
not,
given
you mean for any, like in my front yard, I can say for rent, a place downtown, a place over on.
Again, the situation is such is that it's an on-premise situation, it's also the way it's regulated. Within the residential zones, there's pretty limited signage allowances. I mean, we've always allowed stick signs within the zones, but
I
people
know.
want to put up, Ten Commandment signs or event, community event signs, whatever it may be. So those have already been there. An A-frame is just what we felt like, from our department standpoint, a lot cleaner, easier way to do with the sign. They're not much bigger than what most A-frames are. I mean, A-frame's not much bigger in size, we talked about
Sure.
that. They're like 18 by 3 foot tall, the signage on them's only gonna be 18 by 2 at the most. So, that was the
To
thinking.
answer Steve's question, and
Yes, sir.
if it's okay, Hayward, I'm gonna use you as an example. Hayward owns property downtown. I know several businesses he has. But he lives over on, Park. Hayward can't put a sign out on his residential house in Park advertising those businesses that he owns downtown.
No, he can't for the ones downtown, but
Okay.
if he had a business in his home, if
A-
he had
a home-
his
yeah.
film developing business in his home, let's just say
We-
for example.
We're on residential commercial, but we live
Right.
there.
That's
Right.
another point with the residential commercial zones too.
That's the difference,
It's-
residential,
Right,
commercial,
and we want to be able to allow them, because they are
residential.
residential.
But,
We won't
but
be able to use them.
Steve is in a firm
Or
residential
Key
market.
is having a business license.
Right, that's the
If
key.
you're running a business out of your home, you're entitled to a certain type, size sign. You're not entitled to have traffic going back and forth. You're not entitled to have any other thing that would take away from the nature of the community. But you are allowed to have a small sign.
And our department's also seeing a lot of what they're calling now, according to the new state laws that came out at the beginning of this year, actually the beginning of the fiscal year, cottage industries, which are allowed by state law. I can't regulate them. And that means if you can have a cottage industry, that means you make jelly and sell it within your house, or you make bread and sell it within your house.
Yeah.
Beer, I can keep going, but whatever, there's a cottage industry according to the state law. And some of those people have requested signage, and I really have a hard time telling them no when state law allows them to have that business there. And they're not talking about
They
big signs,
also
they're
have to have a
regular.
business
Business
license.
license.
That's state
Which they,
regulated.
That's-
I'm not advocating.
So we can't touch that.
But we have had them call us with inquiries, if I do this, can I do this? And I have to say, according to state law, yes, you can. You still need a business license, but you
Yeah.
can have a cottage industry business in your home. And I can't do that. And they are producing something which is against our ordinance that relates to a business occupation within your home. And so, you know, it's kind of a mixed up area right there, but it's an area that we have to monitor real close. And we do monitor real close.
Okay, so unless it's a business,
Licensed business.
and how, if you get a home occupation, do your neighbors, are your neighbors able to denote whether or not you can do that?
No, sir, because you're not supposed to do anything that would compromise the nature of the neighborhood or make it look like it's a business rather than a home.
I see. Charles Barry, you have a business at home, don't you?
Yes?
Do you have a sign out in front of your yard?
No?
Okay. I
But
mean,
he has that option.
but he has
he
that,
said
he could
chooses.
actually put a
But
sign in his
They
front.
sign it, everyone has to sign an agreement, and it talks about the regulations for home occupations.
Okay.
residential professional, so that's
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're in RP though, that's, but if he was in residential, he couldn't do that, right?
Yes, sir, he sure can.
Man,
But you can't do just anything.
okay.
You
And the
know what I'm
signs are
saying?
regulated to size, placement, et cetera, et cetera.
So they're considered like these voting signs, so, I mean, we have
We
a
have
right
a
to.
couple of hundred home occupation
Home occupation.
businesses in the city.
Uh-huh.
But if, you know, if you say you own a lawn business and you have equipment, you have to park it out of sight in your garage, under a carport, in your backyard, where it's not seen by the
Those are the
homeowner.
regulations of home
Yes,
occupation
sir.
stuff. And all that was in place way before we started.
Way before this all
Years,
cranked up.
years and
So I mean,
years.
we're talking about, we're bringing up old stuff here. So
Right.
I don't have to worry about somebody putting up something besides Steve's house, because I would not be opposed, and I'm using Steve as an example, but I'd be opposed if somebody could just come into a residential section.
But one advantage that he has, he lives in the historic district, so anything that's put up will have to come through us anyway, because of
That's
the
right.
historic aspect of it.
That's right.
So that's double dipping in his case, he's actually
Yeah.
double protected.
But I want to make myself clear now, people, that along 40th Street, when I drive home, I see people with, let's vote for Jesus and stuff like that. I mean, we don't go out to those signs, right? They
That's
have a
what
right
this
to
would,
stick
that would
them.
cover the stick sign aspect of it, that would be
But
considered
now
a
they
stick
can do
sign.
an A-frame
If they
want.
chose to, of some sort.
Okay.
If they had
That's
a
also
business, I mean, it's
considered a
just
temporary sign.
Right.
Okay.
Do we have temporary signs anymore? Because when I read the paperwork behind some of the signage changes, to me it says temporary signs no longer exist. What we have considered temporary signs, stick signs, the
What do they
A-frame,
call that now?
the banner, will now be considered permanent.
Mr. Attorney, would you speak? And I know we did discuss some of that, and we said, well,
That's right.
we don't have a temporary sign, but we never had temporary signs.
Yes, we
At
did.
one point in time, we had temporary signs, and when we got the LDC, we discussed the enforcement aspects of it, trying to keep up with it, and it was determined by staff and approved by, the LDC, is that we would not, signs would just, you just have a certain area that you were allotted for signs based upon your frontage, and so there's no temporary signs. Basically, we regulate the temporary signs by making sure that they're not torn or tattered or worn. And if they get torn or tattered or worn, then Mr. Crowe goes and takes them down.
Okay, one other question. Recently, I have heard it said, reported that it was said in the city council, that in the RP zones, where you have rental property, that rental property is business property. And therefore, the RP zone can basically be considered a business zone. Functionally be considered that. Maybe it wouldn't fall that way under the definitions in the code, but the reality behind the statements seem to be that if there are 4 out of 6 pieces of property on one side of the street, on one block, or both sides in your RP zone, and that's all rental, well, it's not really primarily residential anymore, it's business. And that disturbs me. It
And-
bothers me. It seems as though some of this is tending to a workaround to go back to the very beginning of this signage issue, where the idea was to have a signage
area, which included both commercial and RP and some residential areas, I think, that we're now all gonna have all the same types of signs be legally available to them. So I'm a little concerned about this, I'm a little leery.
Ms. Stark, none of the zoning has changed at all. It's
I
still-
know that, but when you start saying you can have permanent temporary signs that people can put up, and this is rental property, it's business property, I can now put up these whatever signs and leave them there.
I think where the confusion is, and I don't mean you're confused, I just mean what I think what you're getting at, is that section that we didn't put into the
DDA.
line, the DDA. And the statement I made about the RP, several dwellings. But I was also talking about, if you get over there by the post office, all the businesses are there. You got a business on that corner, you got a business all along across from the post office, you got businesses up the other street. Those are businesses in RP. But none of this has anything to do with having more signs in the RP. I mean, that's separate from everything that we discussed. That was not the intent.
Anything else?
You did a great job.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could I add just one
You
closing
certainly
comment?
may, Tommy, if you'll just get up
And
and walk down a little bit.
I serve on the planning and zoning, but I'm speaking as a citizen. A few months ago, well, probably 6 months ago, we had a gentleman came through town and visited, and he complimented Tifton on how great it was. And then someone carried him through town and he saw a bunch of these signs. If you remember, he wrote a letter to the editor in the paper. We had that letter put into our records and presented back to y'all as council. He made this statement: you're a little sleepy community. You're the bread and breakfast. You've got a lot to be proud of. I think this signage issue needs to be really looked at real hard. Obviously, there's a lot of questions as to what can happen and what's not going to happen. And I'm sort of like Steve said, we got a proud community here to be proud of. Let's uphold that integrity and that character that we've got. Let's don't tear it down. I travel all over this country. I saw these signs back in Arkansas, and I told this to Burton one day. I said, I don't understand this stuff. And it's following us all over here. And we've got places in this town right now that I am quite sure they are in violation of the ordinance. I intend to start taking pictures. We'll bring them back, get them to the proper hands where we need to be. And I expect as council that you take action as a citizen. Because this is something that I think can destroy this community faster than anything else we've got. I know a lot of people are for it, but you pray tell me how you can ride down the street with a scrolling sign in a building and read it and comprehend what you're doing and keep on the car on the road. It's like texting. You know, it's against the law. Ask the police chief over here. Can he enforce it? It's hard to enforce. We've got something here, folks, we can put our teeth into it, we can enforce it. And I think we need to reconsider all of this before we make a decision. Is, yeah, this is what it's gonna be. Put some teeth in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. And we have considered and reconsidered. We've been messing with this thing for over a solid year. And I went to Madison, Georgia, which is the threshold of Georgia historical districts. And I know what I saw up there. And I know we want to be business friendly as well. These guesses got to go hand in hand. Business has some go to Madison, please. Go to Madison and take a look. Nothing's been ruined up there. And those illegal signs, Simon, that you're talking about, please let us know about them. Take pictures, let us know. Code enforcement will be on nothing flat. If it's something that's illegal, but man, we have hashed and rehashed this thing. It has taken over a year to get an answer back to everybody on these signs. So, but I do appreciate what's it. Darlene, do you need to?
I have two questions. Is it legal in any home, in any zoning area, whether it's strictly residential, in the city, to have an in-home office? Rona and Bert?
Rona, would you answer that?
If I bought a house in any place that's residential in the city, can I have an in-home office?
Sure.
Sure.
And with that, I can put up signs.
Yes, you can.
Your husband has a photographic, he had it for years and years
And we
ago.
never put a sign up
But you could. if you-
because of respect to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
We
It's
bought-
always- It's been an option for a very long time.
I don't believe it was an option when we moved in, but we were not going to put a sign up. In fact, we went door to door on our block and explained what we wanted to do, and that we would not create a traffic issue. There would not be any exorbitant amount of cars, no more than if, in fact, it was fewer than when we had teenagers and their friends. We were buying in a neighborhood for the feel of the neighborhood, for the home in the neighborhood, for the entire district. We bought right after the historic district, and we bought it because of the historic district. What we wanted to maintain was what we bought, and we've worked hard to preserve it, and I think everybody that lives in their neighborhood buys the neighborhood, not just the house. I'm very concerned that we can have numerous signs in any neighborhood because business is changing and a lot more people have in-home offices. And so that's the trend, telecommute and all of those things. I don't think signs are needed for all of those businesses. Prime example of a big business who doesn't have a sign is Monty Veazey's. He's in RP, he's 1 block from us. He was requesting a sign. We questioned him at the meeting at the HPC, do you really need a sign? You're moving to our neighborhood to have a quiet house, to have a quiet office, in a neighborhood you like, to do business out of town. And he said, no, I just thought we had to apply for it all at one time. He's never come back because he never needed the sign. It's a really fragile thing you're doing, and you make excellent points that, yes, we've spent a lot of time, but in the next 50 years, another month or 2 months is time well spent. And when you think about what does this cost Tifton, it's not the price of time. It's not the price of the sign. If we lose any kind of accreditation or respect at the state level that compromises future grant money, these signs that are $50, $100, $200 to the business person or in-home office person could cost the city millions. And as a taxpayer, I would rather find the business people help to find other social media to promote their business that's much more efficient, because nothing's been proven that signs in your front yard bring in the business, especially flashing scrolling. And with that comment about it's like texting, the city, I think, opens themselves up, or the business person, for potential severe financial loss when somebody's reading that sign out of the corner of their eye or turning their head and kills someone. It could happen. So this is very important that we give it all the time it needs, because it's very complex.
Appreciate that, Diane.
Can I say something, Mayor?
Darlene?
I mean, I've sat here and listened, okay, to that side of the fence. Okay, let me say this. I know who Tommy was talking about that came through. This man lives in Savannah, Georgia. Savannah, Georgia is where this man lives. Am I correct? In Savannah, Georgia, you can go there anywhere you want to, and you're going to see flashing, scrolling, signs all over the place. So I don't know whether this one man is appalled at that. And if he is, then I guess you just close your eyes to that. But there's a difference in a distraction and something that is in peripheral vision. A distraction could be a pretty woman in a short dress, and it could cause an accident too. But what does the law maintain that we do? Keep our eyes on the road and do defensive driving. That's what it maintains. Not because there's a distraction that's legal, I can look over there and cause an accident. Or whether it be out of peripheral vision, it's the same thing. Tifton, Georgia is going to grow in spite of those that would have it to be stagnant and business unfriendly and keeping people out. It is time, and I applaud the effort that y'all have made, those of you that are for this issue, because you will see that the sign issue will bring Tifton into the 21st century, and it will bring Tifton a lot more businesses that will locate downtown and other areas around here if they're given the opportunity to put up a sign. This ordinance about the stick signs has been around forever. I don't understand why it's an issue. Nobody has went out and put signs all over people's yards. That's never happened. So to say now that we're going to put this in there and leave it just like it's always been, that people are going to go out and just put signs willy-nilly, that's not the way things happen. So, and I just wanted to say that as the business, one of the business places here, let me tell you this, as far as the grants are concerned, I was approached because I've got the same thing that Harold Harper's got. I've got the downtown, enterprise zone. I was contacted by the historic for the grants that he gets. And you know what I told the lady? I said, look, I appreciate the offer, but I wouldn't be interested. I didn't buy my buildings to have somebody to grant me money. I bought our buildings to where they would be a business entity. And whatever we need to do to make the business grow in there, I don't want any interference from the government in any way. So the sign issue is a way that businesses can thrive in Tifton, Georgia, and I applaud you for the action you've taken.
Okay, I think we need to move along at this point.
Could I say just a few things? I had some remarks prepared to make, because you normally have input at the beginning of the meeting. Could I make them now, or do you want me to just?
She signed up, she's the only one.
She did sign.
I think she did something.
I did.
Yeah, she did sign up.
Do you want to say?
And this will be the customary 5 minutes. Larry, you keeping up with the time? This will be like a citizen input, Eloise, and I do
Yeah,
want
that's
to
what I
sign
signed
each.
up for.
And so if you will come forward, tell us your name and your address, and you, Larry, keep up with the time.
Okay, is this for 5 minutes or 10 minutes then? Because I know you usually go 10 minutes to begin with, and that's usually 5.
No, it's always 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. My family and I reviewed a number of HBC guidelines from communities across Georgia and throughout the country. So I'd just like to mention several things about what we found. We did not find a single guideline that allowed electronic graphic display signs. I use that particularly because that's the most egregious kind of lit sign, and that's what I look for. Not one. We highly approve of the recommendation that both exterior and interior signage contribute to the total signage area allowed. And there are historic communities that have that in their guidelines. There have been strong questions about the legality of regulating interior signs and windows that are visible to passing traffic. However, we found HBC guidelines that do regulate such signs, even including interior signs situated up to 4 feet inside the windows. If you want to see some, you can look at guidelines for Sunrise, Florida, or the village of Deerfield, Illinois. The small neon-type open signs that we have a lot of around town, and which our mayor photographed in Madison and Monticello, those are generally allowed. There doesn't seem to be any argument about that. And those are the only kinds of lit signs, I believe, that Mr. Cater photographed in our 2 Georgia cities. All right, I'll forget the. We oppose the recommendation to allow both stick frame and A-frame signs in residential professional zones throughout the historic district, especially because they're paired with reclassifying these signs from temporary to permanent. And all the guidelines we looked at, these signs in a historic district context were considered temporary. Lastly, I question the wisdom of disregarding the recommendations of Lee Burns from the Historical Preservation Division of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. Because of what we're doing, she's not going to declassify us. But are we still going to have the competitiveness that we now have for getting grant money that either comes through the DNR or grant money from other people that they may, knowing Tifton respects its historical district, will now say, oh, by the way, we don't give out these funds, but you might want to contact so-and-so because they have funds available for which you would qualify. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. I would like to, at this point, before we go into item number 8, Mr. Attorney, I'd like to go back and ask, on number 1, is Mr. Leo Soto. Did he ever show up? Leo Soto? Did Mr. Troy Apodeco ever show up? Is he in here? Okay, we're gonna move on. Item number 8 is a discussion of ordinance to amend the charter of the city of Tifton by amending chapter 1, section 1-11A, Code of Ordinance to reduce the maximum term of imprisonment for ordinance violations, to provide for an effective date and for other purposes. Mr. Rob Wilmore.
Mayor, I'm going to take 8 and 9 together since
Yes.
they're very similar. The charter of the city provides for a maximum punishment of 12 months for an ordinance violation. And most cities have the cutoff point of 6 months. The reason being, might have been 5, 10 years ago, the Supreme Court ruled that anything over 6 months loses its classification as a petty crime, and you have the right to a trial by jury. So by reducing the term of imprisonment to 6 months, that eliminates the right to trial by jury, and it keeps the cases in municipal court. And that's all this is designed to accomplish. And I don't think there's a city in Georgia that has anything less than 6 months, anything more than 6 months.
Okay.
So that's basically, there'd be a charter amendment and the code amendment as far as the maximum penalties.
Everybody clear? Move on to item number 10 then. That's the resolution. License for Sonia's place on Poplar Street. I believe we could table that one until tonight.
Yes, sir, we had, Councilmember Terrell will probably want to speak to this. I think he had an opportunity to speak with Ms. Howard and Chief Dale.
Okay.
Yeah. On the last meeting, we decided to table, in fact, I asked to table this motion for Son's Place. That was the former Leo's Bar. And as I told Council before, we've had a lot of trouble there at Leo's Bar. Now, I met with Ms. Howard, and I asked her, no, in fact, I told her that we would not, council would not tolerate this kind of action to continue to take place at a bar where people are physically hurt. Someone could possibly be killed there. Now, she assured me and the chief that she was going to address these problems when they come up. Now, and I assured her that if these problems come up, continue to happen, that we're going to pull a license. Now, with recommendation, the staff recommendation, I suppose we just untable it and approve a license.
It has been put on the agenda for the call for consideration.
Okay. Let's put it on the agenda.
It's on there tonight, Mr.
Oh, okay.
It's on the special call meeting this evening.
Okay. Because I just want you to understand it.
Vice Mayor, do you feel that she's got the ability to keep the riffraff down?
No, but I want to give her a chance to finish on. You know, I just want to give her a chance. But I don't think she has the ability.
Do we have the authority though to pull her license if she
No,
doesn't?
we don't have the to pull a license, but we have the authority to meet
To suspend
and
it, yes.
suspend our
So
license.
you do have that.
We have that authority. But she assured me that she was going to be on top of it. And like I said, I don't want to stop anybody's business. But I want to give her a chance. And if she's not, on top of our game, then it's time for council to step in before somebody
How do we
decides.
go about suspending? Would that have to be,
You go through, there's due process, as you go through, she'll have a hearing.
okay.
Yeah.
Determination.
I didn't
I'm sorry,
literally
I
mean,
didn't
know either.
I didn't really mean we were gonna just go in there and just take a license. I meant that we were gonna go through the channels to do this, to suspend a license.
There is the option, if something happens and you all are compelled to suspend a license from any of the establishments, and if there is strong enough reason, you can actually suspend the license for future businesses at that location if it creates an adverse atmosphere. So it's not like another bar would just move right in there. But that's up to you all, depending on the circumstances.
Chief, I had a question. How many incidents have your men been sent to over there?
Since it's been Sonia's, I'm not aware of any, but it's Lil's, get a calculator.
More than,
Yeah. And see, as I indicated before, there was a young man that's paralyzed from the waist down, and the results of a fight that happened at Lee's Bar. Now, I wouldn't want to see that keep happening. I don't want to see another young man get, a young person, not any person, be physically damaged from the results of a fight at a bar. That, I mean, the police is up are doing their best to try to be up on it, but if you own a bar, then you should be responsible for your personal health. There are certain things the police can do. There are certain things that you should do. So that's what I told Ms. Howard. We expect her to do what she can to improve the situation.
She could get security there, because the police force is gonna be reactive.
Yeah.
They're gonna show up after something's already happened. So
Just
maybe
true.
she could get a security guard or something like that, just at the door, sometimes just that presence. A lot of restaurants use that too.
And it's not unusual for some of the local bars to have off-duty police
She said
officers.
she was planning to have security.
Yeah, she plans.
Okay.
She said she
Okay,
planned
good.
on, but I just thought we ought to give her a chance, and that was my recommendation.
I feel you guys, because I know we have some troubles in your district. We just want to make sure that those guys are protected, everybody's protected, everything's protected. And if this is a source that maybe goes into the community, I think we ought to go ahead and nip it in the bud. But, I mean, I'm for you. I mean, if you want to do this and give her an opportunity, I'm okay.
Well, I think we just need to give her an opportunity. That's with everybody that comes to town. We had that problem with James, what's his name down there. We gave him a chance, and he hung himself. So,
And there haven't been any more.
there haven't been no more bars there. So maybe this will happen too. Maybe this will open our eyes not to determine that Liv's Bar just is a bad situation. We can do something about it.
Okay, let's move on to item number 11. Rona?
Yes, sir, this is an alcoholic beverage license request for a new business called El Dorado Mexican Restaurant. It's located on 82 East where Tequila del Sol was. That gentleman has sold his business. A background check on Mr. Carlock revealed no violations in his background whatsoever. So staff is recommending approval of this.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rona. Moving to item number 13, that is 12, that's the discussion of the tax Secretary of Government's meeting.
Yes, so the city of Omega called last week and is offering to host TIF area government meeting, also known as TAG. They've checked with the other governments, and the 15th seems to be the best day for everyone. It's at 7 o'clock. That's normally our council workshop. We can hold the workshop to as minimal as possible, or we can change it to the following Thursday if you so choose. And that would be the 22nd of May, I believe. But it is going to be held in Omega at 7 o'clock at the Joe Warren Community Center. It's right there off of 319. We just have to give them a head count.
I'd like to participate. I know we got You never know how much is gonna be on the agenda, especially tonight, you know? You know, something like tonight.
We've been wanting this for several years, right?
Yeah.
And so I.
At least 2 years.
Yeah, at least two,
least
exactly,
two.
at least two. So, I'd like to participate as
I'm
well.
in favor of moving to the 22nd, if that's
Okay,
I don't know.
I'm in favor of just moving the meeting along and,
Anybody?
getting it over with. Then going down there together. That way
we
we're
can
all
keep
together.
it at a minimum. We can keep.
Let's just
the
don't
workshop
add all
at
the
a
extra,
minimum.
extra stuff, and then we can do a nice meeting,
I'm okay with that.
and we're all together and we head down.
We
I
could
like that.
always just add it to the next city meeting
Sure.
too, whatever.
Yeah, if something of length comes along, then we'll, unless it's an emergency, we'll look at it that way. We can do that.
I'm fine with that.
What's that
We
old
definitely
song
can
about the
be there.
truckers? We can have a caravan headed down to the lake. Okay, we're gonna move right along. Thank y'all. That's, board report, Ms. Rowland.
Report for April, is in your packet. You know, we're still looking for, a couple of vacancies. I have not heard from Mr. LaForest. I have recently contacted him again. I haven't heard from him. Keep It Beautiful, we do have an application. Lori Marchant has submitted an application. She's interested in serving on the KTV board. And we have 4 appointments on the Historic Preservation Commission that are coming up for reconsideration. Jeffrey Daniel and Cindy Hall were appointed last year, I believe, and they filled unexpired terms, and that's why their terms are coming up. But it also includes Herb Pilcher and Jeff Robbins. We do have an application from Mr. Steyer for the board, and that's my board report.
You still have Miss, she's still waiting in the wings to get on the board. She was on the Tifton Housing Authority.
I know who you're talking about. Elaine Cook? No. Oh, Miss Pettifer. Miss Pettifer.
No.
And I
Vera
called-
Shaw.
Yes.
I'm
Please,
sorry.
please keep Miss Vera Shaw.
Well, I will call her if you would like for me to and
Yes, ma'am.
see.
If she was,
wants
she
to
was
serve
really
someone.
good on that,
Okay.
that other board, and
Okay.
she could be good on several of these if she would
Okay.
be on one. Vera
I will
Shaw.
do that.
Thank you.
That's all that I have.
Thank you, Ron. All right, are we ready for the special call meeting? I'll call that meeting to order. The first item is a resolution providing for alcoholic beverage license for Sonia's Place located at 116 Popular Street. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution for Sandra's Place on 116 Poplar Street.
Second.
I have a motion, second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by raising your right hand, saying aye. Aye. Ms. Rowland, that was unanimous. Do we have an executive session to discuss?
Yes, we have.
Well, at this time, then, the meeting, and will we have any information to give out to the press once this legal
No, sir.
session is over?
No, sir.
But then we'll have the thing to sign, need to sign the thing to get ready. So at this time, we'll take about a 2-minute break.
Let me take motion, I need a motion to go into executive session.
I do. We'll take a-
Second. No, you, oh, I thought he made you. Okay, you can.
We got a motion?
Yeah.
We got a second. Ms. Rowland,
Second.
did you get who did that? Okay, any further
Taylor's and
discussion?
Terrell.
Yeah, seeing none, all in favor of going to executive session for legal matters, please raise your right hand and say aye. That's unanimous. We'll take a couple of minutes to figure out.
Clear the room.
Somebody back there.
Clear the room, man.